We're fighting a battle, we're singing the same song, trying to find someone who cares as much as we do. We're climbing the ladder, while we're sinking in this boat, trying to find someone who cares.
Hello and welcome back after a rather large absence to the strange podcasty show about MLP, its fandom and its denizens. Today, I have not actually recorded any of these for close to a year now, I think. So, we are making a comeback with Reverb Brony. Say hello, Reverb.
Hello, Reverb.
As clever and insightful a comment as ever, Reverb. So, Reverb, just for those of you who don't know who he is, haven't listened to one of these before, have somehow ended up in the weird part of the internet by accident, Reverb, who are you and what do you do? Keep it clean.
Okay. I'm a Brony musician. I've been writing Brony music for the fandom for a couple of years. I've got over 100 songs. I've done a bunch of background music and stuff and opening themes and different stuff like that for Scribbler's readings, and I'm on a bunch of Scribbler's vlogs and different bits and pieces like that because I'm also her boyfriend. Yeah.
I love how you left that one to last.
We asked who I was.
I love that you do not define yourself by me.
I love that you introduced me and didn't even mention that I was your boyfriend. So, I see how it is.
Just kind of shows whereabouts in the pecking order you go.
I'm gonna throw this back at you. You giving me crap for saying that last. It's like, hang on, you didn't say it at all. I see how. All
right then. So we're not, in fact, here to bicker like an old married couple. We are, in fact, here to talk about the season 6 finale to Where and Back Again. Now, this was aired early in the UK, thanks to some rather beneficial to me scheduling problems, because it meant I got to see it first. Reverb's only watched it today, so we're watching this like I watched it last week, he watched it today, he probably remembers more of it than I do, but I fangirled more than he did. So, we're going to talk
debatable.
about this.
I fangirled a lot at this.
You fangirled a lot?
Yeah.
Interesting, considering on Twitter last night you were declared female.
Twitter's an interesting place.
It really is an interesting place. By the way, if anybody would like to draw fan art of Reverb in a dress and makeup, I would totally just put that front and centre somewhere.
Just go the full Rule 63 thing.
Yeah, no more beard, big eyelashes, give him some nice booty. Nicer than the one he's got already, obviously. Moving on! We are talking about the Season 6 finale. So, first impressions. Reverb, I'm going to let you go first, and then I will give mine.
Alright, well, overall thoughts. I thought it kind of started out a little bit slow to sort of get things going and really sort of dig into the actual story. There was sort of a lot of setting up and light poking at things, but once it really got going towards the end of the first half, I really, really loved it and had an amazing time with this.
Well, I actually think that it started out pretty damn strong. I like the fact that from the very first, Trixie was brought in as Starlight's friend. I love the continuity callbacks throughout the entire first episode, and I loved how climactic it became in the second episode. Now, I'd read something of the synopsis on EQD, so I had a vague idea of what was going to happen. It still managed to eclipse anything I was expecting. How about you?
Well, I'm about 8 episodes behind this one, which is a bit unusual for me. Normally, all the seasons I watch as they air, but this one I've just been a bit busy, I suppose, with lots of different things. So I had seen the previous episode with Trixie and Starlight together and them as friends, and I thought that was a really good one, so I loved that they were friends again, and I really loved Trixie in this. The point where she was woken up at night, I thought Trixie is amazing. But when she first came in and she was being all Trixie at the very, very start, I wasn't quite sure, but then, yeah, she grew on me very quickly and has actually become one of my favourite characters now, I reckon.
See, the bit that I actually really liked, and in the first episode, was when Starlight felt confident enough to take Trixie with her to her old village, and Trixie realised that Starlight was freaking out, and immediately got her out of there. So it shows that Trixie is, even as far as episode 1, we'll talk about episode 2 in a second, where she has her shining moment, but even as far as episode 1, she was intuitive enough to realise her friend needed help and to do something. And there's this one visual bit that I absolutely adored, and that's they're running away from the village, and Trixie is holding her cape over Starlight as they run. And I just thought that was a tiny, it's something like 2-3 seconds long. It was a tiny amount of time, but it showed so much about how she's actually quite protective of Starlight.
Yeah.
I liked that.
It was really sweet. I like that as well.
And then Trixie gets her shining moment in episode 2. What did you think of her giving Starlight the pep talk that she needed, that she'd usually get from Twilight, and then going off and getting herself captured and screaming, "Run!"
Yeah. No, that was pretty awesome. Oh, there were so many things that Trixie did which I just thought were absolutely fantastic and made me love her more and more as a character. Probably my favourite thing about both these episodes combined is the fact that they are so character-driven and so true to each of the characters, and none of what any of the characters did felt at all contrived for the sake of the plot, which is really clever when you've got characters like this. And on a lot of weaker episodes and weaker shows, you will see sometimes one of the characters do something just slightly off character just to move the plot along, but it never really felt like that happened here at all with any of them, which is really something when you've got such strong character archetypes such as Discord and Trixie bouncing off each other, and everything still going really smoothly, and the dialogue being really snappy and hilarious.
So we've talked about Trixie, the Trixie-Starlight relationship, and is actually turning into one of my favourites. But there was also another, as you just mentioned, another relationship between Trixie and Discord that came to light. What do you think of Discord's characterization in this episode, or these episodes?
I was just thinking before, I would absolutely totally watch a spin-off of Discord and Trixie. That'd be so amazing.
It really was. I like the fact that they had a character arc. A lot of times in MLP, I find myself, especially in the weaker written episodes, whichever those are, depends on who you are, I guess. Your mileage may vary for which one you think they are. But the weaker written episodes I tend to find are weaker for me because they have open character arcs, as in there's the story arc within the episode, or the story arc of the character across the whole series or whatever is left open. And not in a way that's like, oh, potential for new stories, but more like unfinished.
Yeah.
So the episodes that I really like, even if they're not characters I particularly like, they have a character arc, and that's what gets me. For example, I can't remember his name, Zephyr, Fluttershy's brother. Have you seen that episode?
I have, yeah, I saw that one.
So I can talk about the ending on that one. I didn't particularly like him as a character, but I liked the episode because he had a closed arc.
True.
It felt satisfying by the end.
Absolutely, yeah. It went somewhere and didn't feel like they had to, leave it open for something else, or so that it didn't seem out of place when he was written the next time. And we get that a lot with a lot of the main 6 characters, which I suppose is the advantage that they're able to use a lot of secondary characters, to quote Discord, which I thought was really funny, that fourth wall break from him. So it was almost like they just got all the secondary characters together.
The episode that shows up to me as one that did this kind of thing badly was Applejack's Day Off, in that felt like the character arc was incredibly weak.
Which was Applejack's Day Off? Is that what
the
was
one
that
where she
season?
goes to the spa?
Oh, that one. Yeah, sorry, I did see that one, yeah.
The fact that you couldn't remember which one it is. But that one just struck me as... Yeah, that one just struck me as really, really not good.
Okay, we broke for a second there because I realised that I wasn't recording off my proper microphone. I was recording off the internal mic. I am really hoping this time it's recording properly. Because it's... Yeah, if there's any change in quality up till this point, that's why. If there's no change in quality, it didn't work. Since I can see that the peaks on my recording are absolutely massive right now, it may not have. But we will carry on, which is totally ironic, because we decided to record this in a very particular way today to make sure that the quality was high, and it may have just failed totally. What? What?
You said we recorded in a very specific way this time.
Oh, shut up. You lewd thing. Who are you? Wooten, get off the recording. I love that Wooten has become synonymous with really filthy jokes when you are far worse than him. Nobody knows this. Everybody thinks that you're really innocent and sweet and lovely. Oh, happy chappy Australian. No, he's a filthy devil. And I love him very much. I would have more weight to it if I hadn't messed up love you very much. Moving on. Right, back to where I'm back again. We were talking about Discord.
We were. I really love Discord in this. One of my favourite parts, I think, was at the start when he sort of showed up and it was like, you know, you could get my help. And then they're like, oh, they've captured this person. This person's like, yeah. And Twilight and all their friends is like, wait, what? And it was just like, where is she? Where is she? We're going there right now. And like, it was just completely cut to the chase. Like, it doesn't want to leave her kidnapped for a
Fluttershy,
second
you mean,
longer
not
than he has
Twilight.
to. And I meant Twilight. I mean, I meant Fluttershy.
We're getting Twycord, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. But again, the animators had such a good time with this episode, I feel, because that moment where he just goes, Fluttershy, and John Delancey's voice, he goes from this rather high register and this higher pitch for Discord that he goes into, and he just drops down right into Fluttershy. Where is she? And obviously I can't do it because I'm not male nor am I John Delancey. But the animators, they shrank his pupils down till they were very small and gave them the slight reddish glow. And Discord, who looks a very goofy character, he has been designed to be a kids' TV show villain. And he looked genuinely threatening in that moment.
I was going to say, in that moment, he looked far more threatening, far more terrifying than anything we've seen from him before. Anything. Like, I mean, he's been upset. He's been serious about things. Like, there was a couple of times in the Terek episode where you could see he was genuine with the way he felt. But this was pure, unbridled rage. And it was pretty awesome to see. Like, he was ready to literally cut down an entire race in like just a heartbeat without a second thought, and you could see that, and it was pretty...
You could see how he became the dictator of a whole land in that moment, and how he could be such a genuine threat that it took 2 alicorns and the elements of harmony to defeat him.
I also loved how after that, he's so used to doing everything his own way and very quickly that he just grabbed him, teleported there straight away, and the only reason they weren't literally right there instantly was because of the changeling magic barrier. But just the fact that he's just so unused to anything resembling an obstacle, and he was just so adamant about this happening right now. It was pretty cool to see.
It was, yeah. And which brings us to his characterization in the second episode, and the trick the changelings pulled on him regarding Fluttershy. What were your thoughts on that?
That I actually thought it started really well. Like, when it first started, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, you can tell it's a changeling. But then when he sort of acknowledges that it's a changeling, I forgot the exact thing that the changeling Fluttershy said after that. But it was
very
something...
passive, like, oh yes, we must be changelings. If I am a changeling, you better leave me. And like the kind of thing that Fluttershy would say, is like, well, if you can't be sure, you should leave me. Then.
Something like that, but it was really, really quite touching and really quite genuinely sad and like genuinely fearful. And that part I thought was really, really good, but then it slipped down a level or two and became a lot less enticing as a scene, as all the other Fluttershys around were just wailing, and this one was like the one Fluttershy which actually seemed to be genuinely plausible to actually appear as Fluttershy just ruined it and was like, which one are you going to save?
Well, that's not what she said though, is it?
Like, well, it's not you, so it's none of them.
He didn't say that, and that's one of the reasons that actually I thought that was a really good scene, was that the Fluttershy who seemed so realistic just had this tiny little look and said, Wouldn't it be terrible if the real Fluttershy was in here somewhere, and you couldn't tell which one she was, so you could either save all of us or save none of us, and you could leave her behind? Wouldn't that be a terrible thing to do? And I thought that was, like, really good mind-fuckery.
It was. It absolutely was, and I thought it was definitely a realistic reason for Discord to sort of get caught up with it, distracted, and then kidnapped. Like, I mean, when I say I thought the scene became weaker with all of them doing that, I didn't think that it was out of place for Discord to react the way he did. I thought that was good. Basically, the way I would have done it, probably, is if I had to rewrite that, I would have just had that one Fluttershy doing that, and as Discord is being unsure and sort of just genuinely trying to figure out whether or not he should release this one pony that looks a bit like Fluttershy, then having either all the other changelings jump him, or even just that one Fluttershy jump him or do something at like the last second, which would have been quite horrifying. But
see, I think that would have made it more cliche to think it's Fluttershy and then turns out it's a changeling. I actually really like that they didn't do that, because that's something I've seen so many different times before in other media, in things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Supernatural, various different anime.
I suppose
it always seems to be that you think it's one person and then, surprise, it's actually a changeling. That's basically the plot to Canterlot Wedding.
True. Or maybe another one would have been that he never finds out whether or not that Fluttershy was the real Fluttershy or not. Maybe it could have just kept acting as the changeling attacked the distracted Discord or something like that.
True. But then again, thinking about the show's target demographic, you need to have someone explain what the trick was. Because it is aimed at girls at, I think the upper age is like 10. If you think below that, they probably would need that spelled out to them. Because kids are a lot more insightful than you'd think, but I think at some point they still need something spelled out.
And the reason I was saying like that is perhaps one of the weaker points of the second half. I didn't think it was bad at all, but the second half was just constantly fantastic. That anything which seemed less than absolutely amazing, it seemed like the low part of that episode. So, I mean, I'm not criticising it that much.
So what did you think then of, who else would we have? Thorax. So what do we think of Thorax? We'll get on to Starlight in a second. Thorax had only appeared in one other episode before this, and that was his introduction episode. So it seemed a little bit odd to me at the start when he suddenly appeared, and he was part of this litany of secondary characters who were all quite well known at this point. Starlight, Trixie, Discord, and then this random changeling who's only been in it once before.
True.
What do you think?
Actually, speaking of secondary characters, I took down a bunch of notes as I was watching the two episodes, and at the end of the first episode, one of my last notes was, like, this is even before I found out about the magic thing, but I was just thinking, when they were trying to figure out who do they go to get help, I would have gone to Big Mac. Like, he's the... I mean, there's no magic users left, and physically he is easily one of the most imposing, strong characters in the town.
I think at that point, yeah, I can see... Because I'm in kind of two minds about that, because logistically, the way they'd written the episode, there was no one else they could trust.
Well, no, they'd found out that it was only the... They found out exactly who was being replaced by Changeling.
Yeah, but they didn't know if anybody else had been too. Just because they hadn't been talked about didn't mean they hadn't been replaced. And I can see why the writers didn't want them just approaching random townsfolk. Especially since, as you said, Discord went, there off they go, and they've gone to Fluttershy. There was no chance to go and approach anybody else. Because they'd written it that way. But I'll admit, when I saw the synopsis for when I saw the synopsis for Starlight assembles a cast of secondary characters, part of me did think, ooh, is it a return of the elements of harmony and there's going to be 6 of them? And when it turned out to be only 4, I'll admit I went into episode 2 thinking, oh, are they going to add 2 more to their number? What else is going to happen? And the fact that it did remain just 4 of them, I liked it for what it was, but there was a tiny bit of me thinking, I was kind of hoping maybe Flim and Flam would come back, or one of the other secondary characters who's been given another chance this year, the way that Trixie did.
I don't know. I think I really liked this. The dynamic of those four together worked really well. Or even, I mean, yeah, those four together worked well as like a kind of small cluster team. I reckon if you had 6 of them with characters as dynamic and huge a personality as Discord and Trixie, I mean, even just with those 4, it kind of felt like personality-wise,
like Thorax was just forgotten at certain points.
And Starlight were almost overshadowed or washed out a little bit just because of how bombastic Trixie and Discord were. Like, I mean, Starlight was the focus, so she wasn't really overshadowed that much. But, I mean, you could see Thorax sort of not be in a few shots, and you almost forgot about him just because he's much more of a background sort of presence than those other ones. But I really quite liked him. He had a sort of feeling about him of, what's the word? Being a rather generic personality, I suppose. Like, I mean, he's friendly, he's kind, he's the sort of...
He's frightened a lot. He was like Fluttershy 2.0. Changeling edition.
Well, I mean, I'd say he was suitably frightened, but I wouldn't have thought that his frightenedness was over the top enough to be really a character trait like Fluttershy's, since because he knows what he's getting into. He knows how terrifying this place is, and he knows that none of them have their magic. I didn't think he was frightened to the point of it being unusual, really. So, I mean, so it didn't really feel like there was a lot of standout personality from him in that. Like, there was no real spikes or extremes in the way that he does things. I mean, he was a good character, but he felt really quite well-rounded for a cartoon show. Yeah, I think for the kind of character that he had to be, he worked fine. I'll admit I found his characterization stronger in his introduction episode than here, which is odd considering that he was a really pivotal point in the episode. But I think that's probably what the problem I had with Thorax in this one. He wasn't a bad character, but he felt like a plot device. He didn't in his opening episode. Yeah. He felt like a character in that one, and he just felt like he was there for the big finale in this one. This is probably why I felt like, at the moment he turned up, I kind of just thought, right, you are probably going to play some massive role in the ending, because otherwise why the hell are you here over other much more cemented secondary characters? Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, yeah, he was very much the one who carried the exposition. Wow, fuck that up. When they teleported there and they're like, what's going on? Is like, this is the way the hive works, this is how we can get in, I know the way, I'll lead you. So, I suppose before when I was saying that none of the characters really seemed contrived, they didn't really have to be, because he was built entirely to carry them, basically literally lead them to where they had to go at all times. There were a couple of moments where I thought he shined and did quite well. The point where he played as Trixie and did a bunch of her magic and stuff, I thought was really quite cool. There was a point where they were walking there where they were all sick of Discord being like really whingy and whiny, and he chimed in with that, which I actually thought was quite cool.
He did make... I think you're right, that bit with Trixie where he was pretending to be her. That did kind of justify him being there up to that point as more than just a plot device. It's like, no, you are quite useful.
Yeah, I mean, well, he was absolutely useful. I mean, he explained what was going on when they first got there. He led them through the cave. I mean, he was a useful character, but he wasn't a particularly interesting character at a lot of points. But him being there allowed the others to basically run amok as themselves and not really have to do much of anything. It was almost like dragging a bag of angry bickering cats down a road or something. They're all fighting and don't have to do anything because he's just carrying them literally the direction they have to go in.
I like that analogy. Oh, that simile. I like that simile. There's me, supposed to be an expert in English, can't tell the difference between an analogy and a simile.
I'm going to smile and nod.
So, the last member of our party then, Starlight. What do we think of Starlight's characterization in this episode? Well, these episodes.
I really, really liked it. She's actually becoming one of my favourite characters, especially the further on the episode got. It just really showed how strong her personality was. Especially around the ending bit where... spoilers, I suppose. We're going there anyway.
It's not like we haven't spoiled everything so far.
I know, but when I jump to the end, it almost feels like a bit of a spoiler thing. But I mean, because we were getting there gradually before. But when they beat Chrysalis and... Pardon me. When they beat Chrysalis and she's giving her sort of speech to Chrysalis about, forgiveness and friendship, and it's not too late, and you can still be their queen and all this sort of stuff. That it felt really natural for her to say that, but for it to feel natural for her to say that is such a massive character arc from where she's been, to believe that she actually has that confidence and that sort of natural wanting to do good and wanting to connect ponies and stuff. It really very much felt like any sort of training she still had was done and over. Like, you could feel and see how genuinely she felt that befriending this arguably one of the most dangerous and evil creatures in Equestria is the right thing to do and the way to solve problems. And you could see that with the delivery and the way she was doing that, and that just felt really powerful. It was in that moment that I was like, I actually really like you as a character. You're really cool.
Yeah, Starlight's been growing on me throughout Season 6. I wasn't sure I'd like her as an addition to the main cast, but I think the way that they've handled her character, she's actually... I feel like she's a better main character than Twilight at this stage. Because Twilight, at this point, the whole appeal of Twilight was always meant to be that she was socially awkward and having to learn friendship lessons, the kind of thing that the target demographic need. Things like, if you have one fight with your friend, that's not the end of the friendship. If you sometimes have things to do without your friends, that doesn't mean they don't want to be your friends anymore. Those kind of lessons were important at the start. But Twilight, because she's become a princess and has gone on to this other stuff, it feels like she's gone too far beyond her original character remit to really resonate with the demographic and the audience anymore. She's too high, she's too far outside of the original zone she was in. Whereas...
Yeah, she's no longer an every pony.
Yeah, exactly.
She's above and beyond. And also, I suppose, the funny thing is, you can only be super socially awkward for a time when you're literally the princess of friendship. I mean, after a while, you're supposed to, get the hang of it.
Yeah, and at this point, she has been a princess almost as long as she... Well, in fact, she's been a princess for exactly as long as she wasn't a princess, because Season 3 was such a short season. So, yeah, Seasons 4, 5, and 6, she's been a princess the whole time. She should be bloody well good at this by now. She's in the mentor role. But that does mean that if she's a mentor, who are the audience meant to identify with? And that does bring Starlight into it more. Plus, I like the fact that she is a redeemed villain who's not just redeemed and then chucked off screen for a bit. That we see her struggling with what redemption actually means. It's kind of the thing that I thought we were going to get out of Discord after the T-Rex thing, but we didn't really get that. There were 1 or 2 episodes on it, but we didn't really get to see his journey from ultimate villain into actually quite nice guy who everybody can kind of trust and call their friend. It was callbacks now and then. It was a very piecemeal bit of characterization, whereas Starlight's has felt more fluid.
I suppose the difference is, Discord obviously doesn't get anywhere near as much screen time, and the thing everyone loves about Discord is the chaos, and you can only... And being super chaotic comes with being a bit unpredictable at the same time. And it almost feels like when Discord is being really, really friendly, it's also when it's being really, really docile. So it must be difficult for the writers to kind of balance, do we want Discord as fun and entertaining for the audience, or do we want him as docile and,
makes sense for the characterization.
And a nice person, and, So I can see why they're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place of like, well, the thing that everyone loves about Discord is what we're trying to say that he isn't so much of anymore. And I mean, there are ways that he can be fun and playful and entertaining, but also, reformed to a sense as well. Except it's, I don't know, it's difficult. It creates something else, and it makes it seem almost like he's either putting on a show and making the others laugh, in which case it's not malicious, or he's just being a pest and has to be sort of reined in by Fluttershy all the time. So it's and that makes him almost seem a weak personality, just because he's being a doormat to the doormat.
Yeah.
So it becomes tricky. I can imagine why it would be awkward trying to write him like that. Although seeing him in this, it works so well just because he has a natural sort of clash with Trixie. So seeing them just sort of argue with each other and debate and stuff, it just works really well for both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I see where you're going with that. I think one of the reasons I like Starlight is also because she's a reform villain done right. Discord is... So, yeah, you're right, they have to decide between what made him popular in the first place and what makes logical sense for his character in its current arc. Which is why I think that they're better off going with Starlight, and why she was very satisfying as a character for this arc that you've mentioned. Because they started her from a different place. That he was an ultimate spirit of chaos, whereas she is a pony who was very bitter and needed to learn some lessons to be a better person, if you want. And one of the things I like about this is that the way that Discord and Fluttershy are friends, I'll be perfectly honest, I still kinda don't buy, because it started off from such a rocky, badly written episode. So while I do like the whole idea of Fluttershy and Discord being friends, I think it started from a poor place. Whereas Starlight and Trixie has felt very natural, and I like the fact that Starlight's redemption has also helped progress Trixie's character.
I really love their friendship as well. You're right, natural is the best word for it. It doesn't feel like something you would see on this show. It seems almost like an actual friendship you could imagine is genuine, because they had a couple sort of natural falling outs, but sort of came back together in ways that didn't feel like it had to be done that way for an outside sort of reason. And going back to Discord and Fluttershy, their relationship, it's really quite interesting and sort of hard to pinpoint. Like, Discord's friendship towards Fluttershy is actually, I reckon, a really interesting sort of character study, because it almost seems like a maternal connection both ways. Like, because she taught him about friendship, and sort of from that point when he realised what friendship was, his entire focus for it was on Fluttershy, because she was the only one accepting of him. So he looked up to her as though she was almost a bit of a mother figure, in that, like, am I doing it right? Am I being a good person? I want to please you, sort of thing, in that sort of motherly sense. But at the same time, because he is so much more physically powerful than her, he wants to constantly protect her like she's a little kitten. So it's kind of interesting seeing both of those kind of happen constantly. And then also, she's always like, no, Discord, don't do that, put it down, put down the house. And he's like, yes, okay. It's very much sort of a parental type relationship there. So, I mean, which makes it quite interesting. But yeah, it definitely feels a lot more cartoonish.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. So, the last character who really was of any note in this episode was the big bad. We've talked about reformed villains. What about Chrysalis? The villain who literally refused redemption. The first villain to ever refuse redemption.
That moment was so great and so hilarious at the same time. I actually rewatched it back a couple of times to sort of find out why it made me laugh so much. Because I thought for sure leading up to that that she was going to take it. And I wasn't even upset at that point just because of how amazing Starlight's speech was. I thought, you know what, yeah, I won't be upset if she actually sort of takes this and starts to be reformed, which is really quite rare because almost every other villain that was ever reformed I was groaning about. But I suppose, I mean, that just goes to show how amazing Starlight's speech was. But yeah, the moment that her eyes got, you know, really watery and then she reached out and then the music froze and she just smacked her hand away or her hoof away, it was so funny.
See, I loved how much characterization there was for Chrysalis, considering she was in it for less than 5 minutes. I love the fact that it calls into question her role as queen, meaning that I'm not sure at this stage whether or not Chrysalis thought she was doing the right thing for her people all the way along. She was telling them what to do and how to survive because she thought that was the best way to do it, and anything else threatened the hive. I've seen so many fanfictions that do this, and the one that jumps into my mind most is one that Thornquill Audiofix read. I can't remember what it's called, Transformation or something, but it's about, it's all set in the Changeling Hive, and in that one, I'll link in the Dooblydoo, in that one, she's anti anything else for most of the story, going any other way but the way that she knows to help her people to survive, because her ancestors tried different ways and got the hive banished from Equestria and sent out to the wasteland to try and eke out an existence in the dusts. And to her, she has to do things the way that she does things, because otherwise all of her changelings will die. And I kind of thought that was the way they were going in the show to begin with. Like, she's punishing Thorax because he was sowing discontent, and she's worried that discontent will mean that the changelings won't follow her orders, because clearly they're not a hive mind, as was posited in previous ideas. And in this, I thought that's what they were doing. And then at the very end, she smacks away Starlight Glimmer's hand, hoof, as you said, and flies away, swearing vengeance, which makes me think, maybe she did know. Maybe she knew that this wasn't the best way, but this was the way that she could keep control. And suddenly she became this really interesting character of, maybe she was actually just a complete dictator who had everyone believing she was doing the best thing for them, and she's been rumbled and can't bring herself to live with them now that they found a better way of life that doesn't involve her being in charge.
Maybe. I mean, gosh, it's a very dark theory. I mean, I like it.
It is.
I reckon the way I kind of saw it was, as a whole, she was trying to do the best thing that she thought she knew how for her hive, and what she had done previously worked really well. And the fact that she'd just come up with, frankly, a brilliant plan that went off without a hitch, they'd be laughing. They've literally got the entire of Equestria in the palm of their hoof.
Yeah. Do hoofs have palms? In the frog of their hoof.
No. In the centre of their hoof.
Yeah.
And so she's got reason to be like, no, screw all these other guys. We've got it. We've got what we want. We've got all we need right here. But also the fact that she must have been coming up with this plan since, was it season 2?
Yep, Canterlot Wedding.
Yeah, so, I mean, she has been planning all this, and it's gone off without a hitch, and they've got all of them, and they've just won. So I think even if she just discovered then that there is another way that could potentially work better, she's like, no, I've been planning this for ages. It's my plan. It's gone off so well, and I mean, there is a much more sort of self-centered thing there, but I don't think it's maliciously self-centered. I think it's more a sort of a mixture of, this has worked and we've won, just let it happen, and also kind of like the old person mentality of like, I don't want to change, you know, just let me do it my way, stop trying to, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if it's kind of like trying to teach your grandparent how to use an iPhone. It's just like, screw it, I don't want to. You can't make me. It comes across a bit that sort of way as well. So it almost I don't think it's entirely malicious, but it's just sort of a really old-fashioned sort of thing that she's just like, no, I'm doing it my way. Bugger off.
Which does lend credence to the idea that she and Celestia knew each other in the past, and that's why they reacted so badly when they saw each other just to begin with. Like they recognised each other in Canterlot Wedding. Maybe Chrysalis was trying to become Celestia this time, because that's an awful lot of love. From the pony people coming towards their ruler, Celestia is very beloved. Maybe Chrysalis was aiming above Cadence this time.
Yeah. No, I think absolutely she was. I mean, the fact that they took out everyone all at once and only left herself there to rule and to basically feed on everything. She does want to be the one ruler of everything. And she nearly was, which I think is another reason why she was like, no, screw all you guys. You've just mucked up my plans and taken me down and stolen all of my hives. I will destroy you all. It's just absolute bitter rage, which is understandable in a way. From a character who's known to be aggressive, once you've done all that to her, that's enough of a reason to want to swear vengeance and bugger off, just purely out of the contempt that she must have been feeling.
Yeah, I agree. I love everything about her in this episode.
Yeah. She's definitely become one of my... I mean, she already was one of my absolute favourite villains, but yeah, she's probably become my favourite villain now.
The thing is, a lot of the love for her was based on fandom content and the way that fandom has characterised her, because the changelings have been gone for quite some time, haven't they?
True.
So everything that we kind of knew about them, up to the point that Thorax appeared, we only knew it from fandom. So if that's the case, then the show writers had such a time trying to get this right, trying not to contravene any of their own ideas, but also not opening themselves up to, you stole that from fandom, which is a really sticky wicket.
I was going to say, because I mean, none of them are allowed to read any sort of fan work. And it's kind of funny because a number of the episodes in the past couple of seasons really have felt like bad fan fiction.
Yeah.
But this kind of feels like fan fiction, but in the best way possible. Like the kind of the favourite kind of fan fiction that you read and there's like, this is mind-blowingly good. It's almost like they have taken some of those traits and made them, obviously work in a more trickier to market sort of program with more rules than fan fiction obviously has, but it has that same sort of vibe of reading an amazing story and being like, this is actually really, really good.
You know what it actually put me in mind of? And you're gonna just go, oh yeah, or completely disagree with me. The Upheaval series.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. I mean, for people who haven't read or listened to Upheaval,
it's by Vizidam Vizidane, and Visual Pony and Forest Rain have both the readings of it.
But I mean, and this is, like, I'm going to say something which is going to make people think, like, hang on, how on earth is it like this? But it's almost kind of like, it's like taking the best elements of Game of Thrones and mixing them into a pony story. But I can understand what you're saying by comparing it to that, just because of the sort of the more raw emotions and stuff behind some of the characters, and sort of just the way that they're written with a lot of depth and a lot of personality, but also really quite true to who they are.
And the epic world building is what got me as well. I think that's more what I was thinking, was it is the world building that we finally get to see the Changeling Empire, the Changeling Hive, that we get a window into the Changeling world. Things like the stone that cancels out magic. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, there have been a lot of theories floating around about what the Changeling Hive is actually like. And this is probably better than any of them I can imagine, just based on a couple of things. Firstly, the throne that absorbs all magic in the area and keeps the area safe is so brilliant, because literally with all, I mean, the majority of the ponies basically rely on magic as their main source of attacking and defense and stuff. Everything else seems really quite barbaric and old-fashioned compared to that. So having everything based in a nullified magic zone is brilliant and works so well, and instantly answers all the questions as to, like, why can't you just go and get her because she's in this incredibly dangerous land. And then the other thing that I loved to bits was how the hive changes like a changeling is ever changing and constantly like an anthill, but all the holes are closing up and reopening and going different places, and only a changeling can navigate it. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, I agree, and I just love that so much. It was so clever. I often think this about really creative programming, and I wonder, what made you think of that? How did that idea come to you? And I've been watching a lot of BoJack Horseman recently, and I get that a lot with that show. And I haven't had it for a while with MLP, because I think I'm a few ahead of you in terms of watching things. But I'm a terrible fan in that I still haven't watched parts of season 4, 5, and now 6. I'm very behind a lot of things, because for some reason fandom appeals to me more than canon most of the time. But a reason I'm able to miss episodes and then go, I'm not that bothered, was because I haven't had that, wow, that's really clever moment from MLP in quite some time. But I got it from this episode.
Yeah, like, there's moments in this which truly feel really, really inspired. And, I mean, there have been really great episodes sort of sprinkled throughout the recent few seasons. I don't feel there's, I mean, this is just my personal preference, I don't think there's as many as there were earlier on, but there are absolutely a few, but they're not truly special in the way that this one is, because this one, for me at least, and this is all my opinion by the way, but this is one of the first ones in a really long time that made me truly love the world and wanted to know more about that world again, in the same sort of way that I did throughout some of the earlier seasons, as they were really kind of creating bits and pieces around the place that made you really intrigued to want to know more about this world. It's episodes like this that basically created the fandom.
Yeah. The ones that fill in the blanks up to a point, but give you just enough to leave you wanting more, or filling in the blanks yourself. Things like, where did the big magical stone come from? Where is Chrysalis going now? What was her real motivation? Was she a good queen, or was she a selfish dictatorial ruler? I like this. I've loved this for so long. It's like, yes, MLP, you didn't fail me. It wasn't boring again.
And I suppose the big difference as well is, like, one of the massive show changes, which really was a huge part of world building, which I almost feel was the point where things started to shift from being really inspired to feeling really contrived, was the Crystal Empire.
You reckon?
And then Twilight's Castle, in the fact that you could tell it was something they kind of had to do because they were pushed it from, Hasbro and stuff like that. So I was like, make this work. And they made it work, but it didn't feel super inspired as much as it felt, ham-fisted and made to work. It didn't feel like something really, really clever and brilliant. They made it really good, but there was sort of a lot of stuff like that sort of seemed a little bit more forced than really natural.
See, I would disagree. I really liked Crystal Empire, and I thought it was actually a really good season opener. The bit where I felt like it went off the rails because of executive mandate was Twilicorn. I think that the season 3 finale was a low point. And I like Twilight as a princess, especially because it's enabled us to have things like Starlight, the Return of Trixie. A lot of the storylines that have followed on from that I've enjoyed. But I still, even all these years later, feel like that one was, we did it because we had to, not because it was where we actually wanted to go.
True. Although towards the start of this podcast we were talking about how awesome it is to see character arcs and character arcs that actually go somewhere and have a real kind of big thing to him.
See, that's the thing. I never felt like Twi'lekon was part of the character arc. I really did think that felt like, right, we need new toys, make her a alicorn or something. I felt like it should have been that she became, like, I don't know, some kind of ambassador of friendship, and then became an alicorn from defending the land through the use of friendship. Not, oh, my friends have all got each other's cutie marks. I'm going to sing a song and now I'm a princess!
Oh god. Well, I mean, yeah, talking about the actual episode itself, yeah, no, I can completely understand what you mean. I just thought you meant the concept of Twilight becoming an alicorn.
I think the concept and the way it was executed were both the same in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In that they came too soon and they went too fast. What's come from it has had more time to develop, and that's probably why I like it more. Little things like Twilight learning to fly. That took quite some time, and although it was in the background of a lot of episodes and was never foregrounded, I liked that it took her a long time to learn to fly properly. If she learns to fry properly, then maybe Pinkie Pie can help her by making griddle cakes. But the fact that she just went, there, I'm an alicorn princess. I didn't like that. It was too quick. There should have been more of a build-up from, you're my student, and now you are my equal.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, this subject has been talked to death.
True. I'm just talking about it in terms of, compare that to the character arc that we've had in this episode, to Where I'm Back Again. Compare that to Starlight's character arc.
Could you imagine if at the end of this episode, Starlight became an alicorn?
I worried that was actually going to happen. I genuinely worried.
It never crossed my mind at all, just because I was properly immersed and, yeah, just in the rapture of loving this episode to bits. I wasn't like, oh god, what's going to happen now? I was like, oh my god, I love it all so much. And it's been a while since I've thought that about this show.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like that with the opener of this season. And actually, I feel like that way.
Which one was that again?
Don't put me on the spot. I can't remember now. I just remember liking it. Can't remember what it was.
One sec. I think I've got the wiki here. I'm going to have a quick look.
I'm totally cutting this out of the podcast. But I cited an episode that I can't then remember.
Oh, the Chrysaling.
Yes. Okay,
yeah,
yes.
It was my least favourite of any opener or season-ending episode at all.
True, but there was one thing I really liked about it. And again, it involved Starlight. And that was that they followed up on her weak-ass backstory. And they made it stronger by dint of the fact that he actually was too frightened to contact her as well. And I think that Sunburst, in addition, is one of the few strong male characters in it. But he's flawed.
Really?
I think that he is, in that...
He feels boring to me.
He may feel boring to you, but the thing that I liked about him is the idea of academia versus actual practice. Meaning, he knows the theory to all types of magic. He is very knowledgeable, but he can do all with it. He can't do the spells. He knows all about them. He can teach about them. He can explain about them. He can research and understand them, but he hasn't got the capacity to make them work himself. Yeah. And I think that's such an interesting concept, because Twilight was like that, but she could do Mew Mew, she could do Mew Mews, she could do magic. Shut up, cat. Now got Twilight meowing like a cat as she's trying to cast magic.
Oh gosh.
But I like the idea that. Plus, I like the idea that Sunburst. He was elevated up a little bit. There's been a bit of a stink in fandom recently about, oh, there's no strong male characters. That there is. There are, even. They just don't tend to be the main characters, because the main characters are pretty much set in stone.
So, would you say that Sunburst is a strong male character?
It's not that. It's the idea that that there are becoming more male characters of more diversity in the sort of secondary character role. We've got someone like Discord, who's a prankster, who
Discord,
can be...
yeah. Discord's almost the one exception. I was going to say that the majority of the male characters are either similar to Thorax, they're just so kind of well-rounded that they're not really interesting as characters.
See, I wouldn't use the word well-rounded there. Sunburst, I would say, is more well-rounded than Thorax. You mean nice. Like, they're so bland and
kind of.
affable.
Yeah, bland's basically the word I was looking for. There's no real spikes of their character that make them interesting. They're not the sort of characters that you'd see an amazing story written about, which couldn't have been about nearly any other character. Because there's not enough there to make you really want to gravitate towards them. Like, say, I mean, the main six are pretty easy to use as an example, just because their personalities have such extremes that it makes them become really interesting. There are very few male characters, except perhaps for Discord, which have that same sort of personality spike that makes them really, really interesting. I mean, some of them have a bit. Like, I mean, I'd say Big Mac has a couple. I mean, it's almost funny. The fact that he is almost more boring than all the rest makes him interesting, because it's almost so much that it's become a trait.
I'm really trying really hard not to interrupt you with this.
Sorry, go on.
But to me, that's why Sunburst works, because there is no other character who has that particular characteristic of being great at theory, terrible at practice. Can you name another one like that?
Well,
somebody
I'd say
who
the
is
difference
incredibly
there
knowledgeable
is
but can't do
that
anything with it.
The idea of Sunburst is better than the way he actually is.
But we would have said that about any character when they're first introduced. It's what they do with them that counts. And admittedly, they haven't done much with Sunburst since. But that's not to say that they can't. When Trixie was first introduced, oh, it's the boastful one. There we go, she's done. Or when Starlight was first introduced, oh, it's the evil one who is a bit of a dictator and very conniving. Yeah, I've seen that before. But what they've done with those characters is what's made them interesting. And I reckon that Sunburst has that same potential. And we have gone wildly off topic, you know.
I'd say the difference is, though, that Trixie and Starlight, they're quirky from the start. Which, I mean, yeah, they've got interesting things about their character and interesting backstories, which make them on paper look quite attractive as a character to want to know more about. Then Sunburst kind of has that in theory, in that, you know, he's well practiced in magic but can't perform any of it. But apart from that, you could literally take those couple of elements and put them on any other character and it would basically be the same character.
See, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree on this one.
Why? Keep going. Explain yourself.
No, that's it. I have explained myself. But I think there was a lot of potential to go with his character, but he's not been given enough spotlight yet for it to really come to fruition.
I just want a couple more personality quirks out of him. Make him more eccentric, or make him more, I don't know, like some sort of smooth talker or something who's trying to, you know...
That would really contravene his character. Hang on, have you never had this, where you know a lot about a subject but you can't do it?
Sure.
Maybe this is me just mapping myself onto him, but I love the idea that this personality is getting to the foreground.
No, I get that, but I just want something else to him, to, like, not necessarily to what his backstory is and what he's about, but something more to him that makes him interesting as he's executing this, what he does of knowing magic but can't perform it. Let it something else be there as well to sort of give it a flavour.
But that's the same with any character. This is the same that we had in the very first episode with the main six. That they were all cardboard cutouts to begin with. It was only as they were given more attention that Fluttershy, her introduction was the most cliched ever.
Sure.
And look how nuanced her character is now.
Okay.
Just because they have one characteristic that they're given in their first episode doesn't mean that they are going to be a boring character.
I don't know. I think that the comparison is if you're using Fluttershy...
I'm going to fight you on this!
Okay, no, I've got a couple more. I think if you're using Fluttershy as the comparison for this, the fact that her love of animals is what is the similar sort of characterization to Sunburst in comparison to him knowing all about arcane magic but can't perform any of them. But what makes Fluttershy interesting with her love of animals is her shyness and her timidness, and that sort of area combined with the animals is what makes her more of a full-rounded character. I don't feel like Sunburst has that same personality trait to go with his character's backstory of strengths.
See, I find that the weakest part of Fluttershy's character, to the point where she and Pinkie Pie irritate me, in that they're not my favourite characters at all.
It just depends how they're written.
And I paused for you to say yours, thank you.
Sorry, go on.
The whole thing about she's shy and she likes animals, Maybe it's because I grew up with female fiction, female stories, stuff that was aimed at me. That's so cliched. It's in everything. And it was in everything I saw growing up, so to me that was boring and cliched. Maybe it's the same for you and Sunburst, but that's not a defining characteristic. That's a symptom of a character. So maybe his reclusiveness and bookishness is part of that too.
I guess. I mean, you chose Fluttershy as the example, so I went with the Fluttershy as the example. But I mean, I could use basically any other character which is interesting in an all-rounded kind of way and explain why their backstory about what makes them who they are is interesting, as well as a key personality trait that makes them interesting as they're doing their backstory stuff. Like, I mean, Rainbow Dashes, for example. She's the fastest flyer in Equestria. That's her equivalent to what Sunburst currently has. But then her personality trait of being super arrogant and, you know, really a know-it-all about that is what makes it interesting as she's doing that stuff.
But that all came later.
Not really. It came straight away.
Make.
All of them came straight away.
See, I don't think it did.
I mean, it didn't become fully fleshed out, but an element of it
but
was...
That's the point I'm trying to make.
But there was at least an element of it straight away.
But
Like, straight away, the first time you
are
saw Rainbow
literally
Dash, she
arguing
was
my
fast
point
and
for
she
me.
was a shit stirrer. Straight away. And there was nothing like that with Sunburst, really.
No, he's not a stirrer, but that's...
No, but
look,
I'd almost
he's
prefer if
bookish,
he
he's
was, if
reclusive,
there was something.
He's too proud to admit he was wrong and that he needed help. When he was confronted with a situation that didn't meet his expectations, he didn't face up to it, he ran away, but when it came to the crunch, and he could use his skills, he did, and he used them well, and he was willing to admit that he was wrong, only because this thing from his past came back and forced him to confront his own frailties and shortcomings. That's a pretty f***ing strong character in a first episode. Rainbow Dash's first episode was she stirred, she was horrible to a stranger, and then she came through by not joining what was clearly a fake Wonderballs. That was her character to begin with.
I'm not saying that he's not a fundamentally good pony or, like...
That's exactly what you just
well,
said.
I mean,
that is exactly what
he's
you were
a good
arguing.
pony. In that world, he is a good pony. He is a very much a protagonistic character, but I don't think he's interesting.
You've just contradicted yourself.
Just because of the flavour of the delivery, there's nothing else to it. There's no sort of, I don't know, similar sort of thing that makes a lot of the other characters sort of interesting.
Oh my god!
I'm trying to think of the exact word or...
I'm trying to end this conversation before I reach through the laptop and throttle you.
Go on. This could be fun.
I'm not going to actually reach through the laptop and throttle you, because then Audacity will stop recording me. Can we move on from this conversation? It's because clearly neither one of us is going to budge.
Sure, let's do that.
Yeah, and we have wandered so far off topic that I think we just spent 20 minutes discussing a character who is in this episode for about a second as he pops out of a slime egg.
Debating. Was he actually in this episode?
He was at the end. He was captured and replaced along with Shining Armour and Cadence and Flurry Heart.
I didn't even notice.
Princess McFlurry.
Oh. Yeah, I hated that.
See, there's a useless character.
Yeah.
There's a character who had nothing to her.
Yep.
Can we stop debating Sunburst, please?
Yes, go on. Talk about something else.
Thank you. I don't think we've got much else to talk about, and also we've been talking for like over an hour.
One other thing that I loved about Chrysalis, the part where Chrysalis sort of scuttled out backwards and turned her head all the way around in almost like a possessed demonish sort of way, I thought was really insect-like and just so cool.
Yeah, the animators, as ever, it's been a long time since Heroic Review did an episode review. Like, I think it might have been at the very beginning of Season 6, many months ago. And we kind of fell out of the habit of it, hence we're doing this podcast now. But one of the things that was always acknowledged on that review show was the animators' talent and how good the animation of Pony actually is. And I think that shone through so much in this one. One thing that I would like to talk about just before we finish, which is something that you Skyped this to me when you were watching it, just this thing that you really liked, but I've heard nothing but criticism about from other people, and that was after Thorax transforms into a love changeling, or whatever they're called now, the character design.
I really like it.
You said you loved it.
I like it.
But I've heard nothing but criticism, so why do you like it?
It looks so cool.
Can I have a little bit more than that,
It's-
please, Mr. I'm going to debate Sunburst for 20 minutes?
It's pretty.
So are you, but you don't see me.
One sec, let me find a screenshot of it.
It's very, very colourful. It looks very much like caterpillars that are transmogrifying into something else. It looks very insectoid still, but not in an evil kind of way.
It does, yeah. I mean, okay, I've just found a picture of him. I think the thing that I like the most about it, it's more unique to him than the others, but the kind of antlers makes it kind of deer-like, and I just love the idea of deers in this sort of world, so it almost looks like a cross between a deer and an insect.
Well, the thing is, the deer have actually turned up in the comics and have official designs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you mean about they look kind of deer-like, but also they look like mandibles to me.
Trying to remember what a mandible is. Let me Google that.
It's the front part of a beetle, the mouth. The num 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 bit.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, yeah. I guess the reason I like it is that they look like changelings in their body shape, but it just seems like a natural progression from changeling. It almost looks like it makes sense. Just because you can see the sharpness of their faces and the hard edges of everything. It's that sort of same changeling and the carapace and stuff like that on them. I kind of like the way that it looks kind of jewel-like. Kind of crystal-like and crystallized. And I love the way the hues of the colours blend into each other. They're not just solid colour here, solid colour there. Every single one of them has like a head that goes from an aqua to a purple sort of thing, or a green to an orange, and it's like a gentle transition across all of them, or like even a blue to an orange. It looks really unique, and all of them are able to be much more individually distinguished. I'm sticking with I like it.
Just like I'm sticking with I like Sunburst.
No.
Right, that seems like a good place to leave it, because you pretty much typified everything I was going to say.
I took down a lot of notes as I was watching this. I'm just trying to remember. I'm going through just basically making sure I had them. The first one was, at the start of the episode, I wrote down, Twilight stairs need a guardrail, because that's just dangerous. And then I wanted to ship Starlight and Luna, and wrote down spaceship ? I thought Rainbow Dash's backhanded compliments towards the start were just ridiculous. And, like, I really liked how Pinkie Pie didn't understand the concept of what it was like to be invited to a party and not to go. I thought that was kind of really, really cute. I like how when... Sorry, I've got a few more of these. I'm just going to quickly say them. I'll try to rush through them quickly. When Starlight went to that town and all of them wanted to run things, I love how, at least initially, she didn't want to take that responsibility on, in that she didn't want to run things and be the boss. In the end, I thought it went... I mean, yeah, the initialness of that I thought was really quite good.
The initialness?
Yeah. When it first came about, I thought, oh, that's really quite clever. And then it became a much bigger thing, which then became resolved in the end. I didn't realise straight away that it was going to be the arc of the episode for her to go through. But I just thought, I haven't seen her for quite a while this season. I thought she's just become much more humble, and it's like, oh, no, you guys run it, it's cool. I thought, oh, that's alright. But then as it became something else, I thought, oh, it's still good, but it's, I don't know. I thought it was something else initially, but I still liked it. That still probably makes no sense.
Oh, it's still nice.
Do
you have anything else in your litany of likes?
Let me see.
This is a very positive podcast.
It's a bit. Except for the part where we argued with each other.
Yeah, but that wasn't even about this episode.
The part where... Oh, yeah, there are a couple of things. The part where Starlight levitated herself off the balcony, I thought was a bit weird.
I actually like the animation of that.
Really? It was just a glow around her, and then her OC just, her character just floating.
OC!
I've said OC so
Freudian
much
slip
in these.
there, Reverb!
There was another bit when they discovered that everyone was changelings, and they sort of spied on them, and then they went invisible as they were hiding. When the Twilight changeling got really close and was sniffing around, the way they were shivering in fear, I felt it. Like, it was really well done, and I could just feel their terror and their genuine fear, and the fact that they have no idea what they're doing. They're not equipped for this. They've never done anything like this before, and they are genuinely terrified for their life. That part I thought was really quite powerful, and yeah, I really felt that. And then Trixie just screaming and freaking out. And probably my favourite part of the first episode, like the thing that just made me laugh so much, when Thorax came out of the bush and Trixie just lost her shit. And Starlight just put a barrier over her, and you can just see her screaming, but you can't hear any of it. I just thought that was so funny.
I must admit, I like it when they, when she was let out of the bubble and she just went like, "Hey, if Starlight says that you're trustworthy, fine, but please don't touch me."
Yeah, that was another thing that I was like, this is why I love Trixie as opposed to some of the other characters in the show, just because she feels more real in that response. Like, I can see a lot of the other characters in the show just being like, well, if you're a friend of my friend, then I trust you, and we'll go on this adventure together, and it'll all be great. But I love how she's like, don't come near me, I'm onto you. It feels more natural and more real. And I really like that.
Do you have anything else to add?
When Starlight showed up with like all the princesses of the land and all these other, and like the Spirit of Chaos, and they were like, yeah, sure, come join the party. They should have shit bricks when they saw that those guys were arriving to their little 2-street town. They should have been like, what is going on?
You're friends with the princess and the Spirit of Chaos? Oh my god!
You're friends with all the rulers of all of Equestria, and you've invited them all here to our, 10-something houses, throwing this little street party.
Oh my god!
Yeah, they should have lost their minds. And then my last one is, I would totally watch a Discord/Trixie spin-off show, where they solve crimes.
And ride pigs.
And ride pigs, yes. We should totally do more reviews together.
And argue about characters who don't even appear in the episode for beyond 60 seconds. Beyond a second.
Yeah. That's what makes reviews interesting, is when people start arguing. That's what makes podcasts interesting.
Oh god. I have to edit this thing, so I'm not find this interesting now. So I'm going to make the executive decision now to end this podcast on a somewhat high compared to where the depth it has sunk to. Right, I have been Scribbler. It has been lovely speaking to you all again. Say goodbye, Reverb.
Goodbye, Reverb. No, thanks everyone for listening. It was a good fun.
Be lovely to each other, and good night, everybody. Sunburst forever.
Klutzy.
What?
You're a changeling! Get her!
Oh, for God's sake.